I'm Shannon Martin. Tonight, the Leafs are out of the playoffs, and now their GM is out of a job.
I had gotten to a different place about how I felt about the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Kyle Dubas is sent packing after an early exit from the postseason. We'll hear more from the Leafs president about where the team goes from here. Plus,
what happened last year, we are not going to tolerate. My officers will be out in full force.
After last year's celebrations were interrupted by violence, Toronto police are hiking enforcement ahead of the long weekend. And
the phone calls have been ringing off the hook with other mayors saying, hey, I want my independence.
Looking at the fallout from the Premier's decision to dissolve Peel Region, what it could mean for other GTA municipalities. Thanks for being with us on this Friday night. A dramatic start to the off-season for the Maple Leafs on Monday. An emotional Kyle Dubas told the world he might not want to continue as Leafs GM. But today it was the Leafs who told Dubas they're moving on without him. Team president Brendan Shanahan made the announcement this afternoon. Greg Ross was there watching it all for us. Greg, it sounds like as of last night, Dubas wanted to stick around. So what happened?
Well, today, Shannon, we got to see an incredibly candid Brendan Shanahan as he walked the media through what transpired over the last couple of months to lead us to where we are right now. And it really started back in March, right after the NHL trade deadline. And that's when Brendan Shanahan says that he made the decision that he felt Dubas had done enough and deserved to come back to be the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And contract negotiations would begin with Dubas's agent, and they would continue right through until the time when the Leafs were eliminated from the second round of the playoffs by the Florida Panthers. And even then, Shanahan says he was still determined to re-sign Dubas. And then, of course, just earlier this week on Monday, Dubas held his press conference. He made it clear that he wasn't sure if he wanted to come back, and that's when Shanahan said things started to change. He was now thinking about having to possibly replace his general manager. Then on Thursday, Dubas said he did want to stay. In fact, him and his agent made a counter offer to the Leafs for that contract. And that's when Shanahan said that it just wasn't going to work because of the fact they were too far apart. He talked about that today.
Just before dinner time, I got an email from Kyle saying that he did want to be the general manager of the Maple Leafs. At that point, I have to, if I'm being honest, I had gotten to a different place about how I felt about the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs. A gap had risen within the contract status, and but nevertheless, the email that I received from Kyle, I just felt differently. Woke up this morning, drove to Kyle's office at Ford Performance Center, and informed him that we were not going to be renewing his contract.
So that ends a 9-year run for Kyle Dubas with the Leafs, 5 of which he was the general manager of the team. Let's take a look back to see how we got to where we are now. Kyle Dubas first joined the Maple Leafs in 2014 as a 28-year-old so-called whiz kid. He had been working as the general manager of the OHL Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds before becoming an assistant GM in Toronto, where he would work closely with Lou Lamoriello. Dubas also split time as the general manager of the Toronto Marlies and would lead the team to a Calder Cup championship in 2018. Following that season, Dubas was promoted to general manager of the Leafs at just 31 years old.
The reality is I've worked in hockey since I was 11. I've been scouting since I was 17.
Dubas wasted little time making a big splash that offseason with his first major signing, inking free agent John Tavares to a 7-year deal.
It's a very exciting day for us as we continue to move towards our ultimate goal.
Dubas would later name Tavares captain of the Leafs, joining the core group of players, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander. While those players all joined the team prior to Dubas, he was able to re-sign the trio to multi-year deals, keeping that core together long-term. Dubas also inherited head coach Mike Babcock, but the two seemed to butt heads. After a poor start to the 2019-2020 season, Dubas fired Babcock, replacing him with longtime friend Sheldon Keefe, who who coached under Dubas during his time in Sault Ste. Marie and while he was GM of the Marlies.
I'm not focused on what this team isn't. I'm focused on what this team is.
Under Dubas, the Leafs thrived in the regular season, finishing near the top of their division year after year. But they never seemed to be able to win when it counted most in the playoffs. In his first 4 seasons as GM, the Leafs failed to win a playoff round. And while they did manage to get to the second round this season,
the Cousins scores! It's a series winner!
They would go on to lose to the underdog Florida Panthers in 5 games. And now we look ahead to next season and what this team is going to look like. And there are a number of unanswered questions, including what is going to happen to that core group of players. You think about Austin Matthews, who has just 1 year left on his contract. What does a move like this, letting go Kyle Dubas, mean for the future of Austin Matthews and the Toronto Maple Leafs? And you think of Mitch Marner, William Nylander, and of course John Tavares. All of those players are on contracts that will expire in the next couple of years. So those are question marks that need to be answered, and those questions likely won't be answered until the Leafs do find a new general manager. And Brendan Shanahan says the search for one is already underway. Shannon?
Yeah, you're going to be watching it all for us. Thanks, Greg. We appreciate it. We have much more on Dubas's exit and his time in Toronto on our website. Find that cbc.ca/news/Toronto. The long weekend finally here, often filled with fun, fireworks. You may remember this time last year, it was a disaster down at Ashbridges Bay. 24 people were arrested after violence broke out. As Clara Pasica shows us tonight, police say they're ready and vow that won't happen again.
Some families near Ashbridges Bay can't wait for the fireworks Monday night.
What I love about fireworks, reminds me of my homeland, the Philippines. Because there's a lot of festival and like that. So that's why I love seeing fireworks.
Long weekend celebrations got out of control last year. In the chaos, 2 men were shot, another was stabbed, and police officers were hurt. Even a police horse was injured. Over the weekend, 24 people were arrested. Police say they have a plan to avoid a repeat this year.
We will have a large number of resources here, starting today, continuing right through until the fireworks are over. We are going to have police officers in police cars, police officers on bikes, police officers on bicycles, police officers on horseback, and we're going to have police officers in police boats just off the beach here patrolling up and down the waterways.
In spite of these efforts, some residents are still nervous.
It would be great if the police were patrolling it more. We've got a lot of families down here, and it's sort of ruined the experience for everyone. And I've spoken to lots of families who wouldn't come down here this year based on what happened last year.
The city's area councillor, Brad Bradford, says it's been all hands on deck to ensure the event is safe this year, and he's confident it will be.
This is a family-friendly event, though, and this is a family-friendly space, and we are going to make sure that we have the resources in place to keep a family-friendly atmosphere. If anybody has any ideas of coming down here and causing a ruckus, forget about it, go somewhere else. We don't want you.
Police are reminding everyone that personal fireworks and fires aren't allowed, and they're asking anyone who sees something that shouldn't be happening to approach an officer and let them know right away, to give this Victoria Day a very different ending than last year's. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
Lots of people heading up north to enjoy the long weekend. That means busy highways and higher chances of crashes.
We're out here patrolling, high visibility patrols, education, awareness. We just hope drivers are understanding that their safety is in their hands and their decisions directly affect themselves, their passengers, and other road users.
OPP saw a 16-year high in road fatalities last year with 359 people killed. Officers are reminding everyone, be patient, give yourself extra time, and drive safely. Well, long weekend. Air travel was looking iffy for WestJet flyers until very early this morning. At the last minute, the company and union reaching a deal. Ithel Musa has more on what we've learned.
It was a deal reached at the 11th hour. A tentative agreement between WestJet and its pilots union came late Thursday night.
This agreement is just one of many steps we are taking to re-establish WestJet as the friendly, reliable and affordable airline that you know and love.
But there wasn't a whole lot of love on Friday among some holiday travelers like this man.
What time is that flight to Winnipeg? 9 o'clock? That one's being canceled as well.
WestJet says it canceled nearly 100 flights Friday in anticipation of a strike, leaving many in the lurch.
We're missing out on a weekend with my daughter.
Paid a good decent chunk of money for the trip, and now unfortunately we're kind of at a standstill.
We planned it, and then we never expected this in a million years.
Some are vowing to never fly with the airline again, but
if you're a Canadian and you're flying, you've got 2, maybe 3 choices. They know that. The airlines know that.
WestJet pilots were bargaining for higher pay, better job security, and scheduling. With a shortage of workers in a high-demand industry, this expert says they had the upper hand, and more labor disruptions could be on the horizon for airlines.
Bargaining power is shifting to workers and labor and unions. I'm not saying they're going to have complete power, but they're going to have a lot more power than they did before.
WestJet says it's ramping up operations to try and get passengers to their destinations, and those who have had their flights canceled will be refunded or reaccommodated. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Nick is here with us tonight. A sunny start to the long weekend. People I know have big plans. We're heading down to the water, having barbecues. What's it look like?
Well, you know, unless they're planning on having a barbecue or outdoor plans late this evening or sort of for the first half of tomorrow, the weather this weekend actually looks pretty good. Now, I know May 2-4 is typically a mixed bag, but for the most part, we've got a decent weekend in store. Now, it starts out with 22 degrees this afternoon. We are watching, though, a line of showers that's moving right across just north of the GTA and west of the GTA. There's a long cold front that's going to sweep through. It'll drop temperatures just a little bit, but really this is going to be a rain event for us and the risk for some thunderstorms for tonight. Now, in terms of the timing of it for the city of Toronto, starting around 8 to 10 p.m. This evening, earlier, if not now, for areas to the north of the GTA. Heavy amounts of precipitation, though, at times, the risk of thunderstorms as well. Tapers off to showers by tomorrow morning, a few isolated showers till about noon, and then really just some cloud cover and maybe some spotty showers into the later afternoon on Saturday. But by Sunday, it clears out, and that's where a real nice May 2-4 weekend weather comes. 14 degrees tonight, again, showers and the risk of a thunderstorm, about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain, 18 for tomorrow with clearing sky cover, and then some beautiful weather. We'll tell you more about that coming up in just a bit.
Okay, thanks. We'll see you shortly.
You bet.
We have a gruesome discovery to tell you about in Oakville. Police say a person out for a walk found a fetus. Officers were called to Oakdale Park just before 9 a.m. They say a person walking near Munns Creek made the discovery. There are very few details on this one tonight. Officers are asking anyone with information or video to get in touch. Ontario's top court has ordered a new trial for a Toronto woman convicted for her role in staging a home invasion that left her mother dead. In 2015, Jennifer Pan was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. She was found guilty on both first-degree murder and attempted murder in the 2010 incident that left her 53-year-old mom dead, her father suffering a critical head injury. Pan and 3 co-accused, including her on and off-again boyfriend, appealed their convictions, saying the judge did not provide the jury with all available verdicts. Dates for their new trials are not yet known. Almost 7 years after Suleiman Fakiri died in a jail cell, an inquest into what happened might finally answer the questions that have haunted his family. Fakiri died in 2016 at the Central East Correctional Center in Lindsay. The 30-year-old suffered from schizophrenia. He was waiting for a bed at a mental health facility at the time. He died after correctional officers restrained him, pepper sprayed him in the face, placed a spit hood on him, and left him face down in a segregation cell where he stopped breathing. An autopsy revealed he suffered more than 50 bruises or other signs of injury from blunt trauma. No charges were ever laid due to, quote, insufficient evidence. An inquest by Ontario's Chief Coroner Office set to begin in November We'll examine what happened in those hours leading up to his death. Now, members of the jury, as well as the family, may see video footage for the first time that was captured by surveillance cameras. After yesterday's big breakup news, we're learning Peel isn't the only region in Ontario that could be split up. The province introduced legislation to divide Peel into 3 independent municipalities: Brampton, Mississauga, and Caledon. Lorenda Redekop has more on what changes could be coming in the GTA and beyond.
A day after the province announced the first step to break up Peel region into 3 separate municipalities, the Premier says he's hearing from other parts of the province.
I'll tell you, the phone calls have been ringing off the hook with other mayors saying, hey, I want my independence.
But he wouldn't say who's called.
Well, I'm not going to name names. That's not fair to them. But everyone wants to, call their own shots per se, and I don't disagree with them.
Here are the 6 other regions the province plans to take a look at. All the other GTA municipalities outside Toronto: Halton, Durham, and York regions, plus Waterloo region, Niagara, and Simcoe County. Regional facilitators will be named in the coming weeks to look at whether any of them should be split up. So far, the heads of Durham, Waterloo, Simcoe, and Niagara say a regional government is working there. But Niagara's regional chair still sees a point to the province appointing a facilitator.
They're primarily interested in having housing units built. And what I think the facilitator will do in our area, as may be the case in some of the other areas, is simply try to determine the best way to get the homes built that they want built.
A question mark is what could happen with York region. It has bigger cities. Vaughan and Markham both have more than 300,000 people. Their mayors were not available for an interview today. In a statement, York's chair says the region welcomes working with the province and all 9 cities and towns to consider the best mix of roles and responsibilities. The region is also a neighbor to Peel. He says they'll evaluate how its dissolution could affect York, including with transit, water, and emergency services. One Liberal MPP wonders how Peel's coming split could affect taxpayers in the rest of the province.
What can't happen is that it can't be taxpayers and residents of every other city of Ontario that's paying for Peel to be made whole. If Peel wants to have a divorce, that's fine. The residents of Peel need to pay for that.
Clarity on that could take a while. A transition board still to be appointed will make recommendations, set to come in around a year and a half. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
The Premier is promising more money to help build an electric vehicle battery plant in Windsor. It's expected to bring in more than 2,500 new jobs to the area.
This is all about protecting jobs and the people. That's what it comes down to. Down in Windsor, before we came into office, you could shoot a cannon down the street in the middle of downtown and you wouldn't hit anyone. This is going to be an opportunity to people to get great paying jobs. It's going to bring certainty and stability within that region.
Earlier this month, the company Stellantis halted construction on its $5 billion plant, claiming the federal government wasn't living up to its funding promises. Now, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland put some of the blame on the province, saying it needs to provide its, quote, fair share. Doug Ford today didn't say how much more money the province will provide. It previously announced $500 million for the plant. Turning to the race for the mayor's chair next, another busy day for candidates. Talia Ricci has a rundown, and if you're finding it difficult to keep up with all the announcements, one expert says you're not alone.
With a spring long weekend in store for Torontonians, some may be dreading the long lineups to catch a ferry to the Toronto Islands. Candidate Anna Bailau says she plans to make that day trip more accessible.
I will make the ferry of Toronto Islands free for kids under 12 years old, when accompanied by an adult, including school groups. Bring bike share to the island so residents and visitors can access it, and negotiate with Metrolinx to expand Presto Pass to the islands.
Family was also the focus of Mitzi Hunter's announcement today. She's proposing to combine affordable housing and childcare.
Under my plan, affordable developments will house 34 new childcare centers and an additional 34 Toronto Public Library satellite branches.
While Brad Bradford says his housing plan includes converting empty offices into homes by introducing a new zoning framework for office to residential conversions.
This will help add desperately needed housing supply, reimagine underutilized office space, and add more vibrancy to our communities.
Olivia Chow says she plans to improve 911 wait times and expand community crisis teams.
What we need is to expand it across the city 24/7 so that this service is available to all those people that needs it, those that are in mental health crisis.
Okay, let's take a breather because that was a lot to take in. To recap, we covered childcare, safety, housing, and making the Toronto Islands more accessible. And that was just today. Are you starting to feel like it's tough to keep up with all of these announcements? You're probably not alone, at least according to one expert.
The truth is, it's hard even for nerds and for the most plugged in followers to kind of distinguish like who's saying what and what's the difference between what they're offering. It's very difficult in this short, crowded campaign to kind of get a distinctive brand out there.
Especially because Torontonians are passionate about many of the same issues. Candidates will have over 5 weeks to snag the spotlight before we head to the polls on June 26th. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Yeah, you heard it there. Lots of promises being made on the campaign trail. Next week, there's not one but two big debates planned. I met up with municipal affairs reporter Sean Jeffords at City Hall to learn more about what we can expect. We've got a short week next week, but two debates. We just saw the first big debate of the campaign. Was that like a little preview of what's to come, would you say?
Yeah, I think it was the curtain raiser. I'm stealing a line from Meyer Sumiatiki, one of our expert analysts we lean on a lot. You know, it's the first look that I think a lot of voters have had at the candidates. There are a lot of them. Really, though, we're talking about a smaller field of top-tier people. 5 were in this debate of the 6 that I would consider our top candidates. And they got a chance to really have a bit of a dust-up here. 2 hours, a bit of a marathon session, and they got into the issues.
Yeah, standout moments for you, would you say?
Well, I think it really was the Q&A, and it was very clear who everyone in this race thinks the front runner is because they all turned and squared off and had questions for Olivia Chow. And some of them, you know, the tone, I would say, was really varied across the board in terms of those attacks. Some were a little more mild, some were pretty blunt. But Chow was really prepared, it seemed to me. She knew that she was going to be the focus of a lot of the discussion, and she used it to her advantage. It actually gave her a lot more time to talk, really, about her issues and her platform.
You've been following Chow for many years.
Right.
So when you reflect back to 2014, when we were in an election and she was running for mayor, how does she compare 2023 version to 2014?
You know, I find myself thinking about that 2014 race a lot, Shannon. I think that there were parallels. There are parallels between this race and that race. You know, she came into both of those races, or this one and then, as the front runner. And in 2014, it was a long campaign. She lost momentum. She fell to 3rd place in that vote, and John Tory won. And her team actually has addressed that with a campaign video this time around. And she talks in that video about some of the challenges she faced in 2014 and just not quite feeling comfortable, deferring a bit too much to her advisors, sounding a bit scripted. And I think this debate is a great example of Olivia Chow leaning into who she is and talking with maybe a little bit more of, maybe a bit more comfort, speaking just extemporaneously about, her experiences in the city and on council. And, just she seems to be a little bit more at ease.
I know the others tried to take her to task a bit, and there was a lot of talk of math. So that was a criticism, maybe, that she was a bit soft on sharper policy points?
There were a lot of very sharp attacks, specifically from Brad Bradford and also from Anna Bailão, about Olivia Chow's math and talking about taxes and how she plans to pay for a lot of her plans. And, you know, they're not wrong in the sense that the city has got a lot of very serious fiscal challenges. It has a budget gap of nearly $1 billion. And the lens through which we should probably be viewing all of the campaign promises that people are making right now is how is someone going to pay for this stuff, because they've got to deal with that budget gap. So there was that, certainly.
You know, you mentioned 5 people on the stage of the, top tier candidates. There was a notable absence with Mark Saunders. His team said he had a prior engagement, I believe, right?
That's right.
You know, it's been a few days. Do you think that that's hurt him?
You know, the experts that I've spoken to or who are watching this campaign closely say that it was a strategic error. That's their view, that he probably should have been there, that it was a really good opportunity. It was the first major televised debate. And this is a short campaign, relatively speaking. You know, most municipal campaigns are 8 or 9 months long. This is a condensed 3-month by-election. So you've got to really use every opportunity you've got in front of you to get out in front of viewers and get attention. And that's a missed opportunity. Now, is it the last chance voters will have to see him, to view him on TV? No. As you mentioned, we've got 2 debates this week. I understand Mark Saunders is going to be at both. So, hey, there's another opportunity for him to do that. And in fairness to Saunders, he was at a debate the week before. It wasn't televised. And his camp points out, hey, Anna Bailau, Josh Matlow, Olivia Chow, they weren't at that debate. Mark Saunders was. So, there's more to come on that.
So much to think about. We really appreciate all your analysis.
Thanks, Jen. I appreciate having these chats with you.
Thanks. Welcome back. The Prime Minister is in Japan tonight, joining other G7 leaders demanding Russia end the war in Ukraine, imposing dozens of new sanctions on people supporting Russia and its military campaign. Ashley Burke is there.
G7 leaders honoring the lives lost. They walked on the same ground where the world's first atomic bomb exploded. This was the only structure left standing, a haunting reminder as the world faces growing nuclear threats. Canada and its G7 allies issued a statement calling on Russia to end its nuclear blackmail and return to disarmament and arms control.
You and I have now signed the Hiroshima Accords.
Then unleashed new sanctions.
More than 70 new sanctions on entities and individuals complicit in the military actions against Ukraine, but also people who are complicit in the human rights violations.
For its part, the EU's restricting the import of Russian diamonds, a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Russian diamonds are not forever.
But these leaders still face a problem. How to crack down on those who aren't part of their alliance, helping Russia evade their sanctions. India's Prime Minister is among those invited to observe the G7.
There are technical loopholes. Russian oil going to India, India refining it, but the products, the higher value added that India sends into Europe and elsewhere, legal.
Ukraine's president says his priority this week is calling on allies for more modern weapons and aircrafts.
Including supporting brave people in Ukraine.
The U.S. has now signaled it won't block EU allies from sending F-16 jets to Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky was supposed to address the G7 virtually, but instead he's coming here in person. A senior Ukrainian official said that important decisions are being made and that it's essential that he's here. Ashley Burke, CBC News.
There is outrage tonight as another 3 men in Iran suspected of being anti-government protesters were executed. Officials claim the men confessed. Families say they were tortured. As Margaret Evans shows us, it's believed more than 200 people have now been executed by the regime so far this year.
Demonstrators gathered outside the Iranian embassy here in London as news of the latest execution spread. A small but determined crowd worried that the plight of Iranian protesters is slipping from the world's gaze, along with the cause they're fighting for.
As soon as they protest in the streets, they get shot, they get beaten up, they were put to prison, and as you can see, they can be executed with no fair trial.
Saeed Yagoubi, Majid Kazemi, and Salah Mir Hashemi were arrested last November in the city of Isfahan, accused of involvement in the deaths of 3 security force members. They were charged with enmity against God,
which is consistently used by the revolutionary courts in Iran to eliminate and target political dissidents.
Nationwide protests against Iran's governing clerics swept the country last September in the wake of Mahsa Amini's death, while she was in the custody of the morality police. After the 3 men were executed today, Iran's judiciary published on its website footage of them allegedly confessing, testimony obtained, according to Amnesty International, under duress.
Repeatedly beaten, hung upside down, given electric shocks, threatened with rape, threatened with the death of their family members.
Human rights groups want a strong reaction from the international community.
The situation is as bad, if not worse, than what it was in November, when there was that global outpouring of support. It's not over.
Images posted on social media showed friends and family of the 3 men grieving at grave sites. And as night fell, there were images, too, of more protests underway. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
To Italy next, where severe flooding continues to slow rescue efforts. This crew had to access a building's balcony by helicopter to carry out a sick toddler. Others had to be rescued from flooded streets by boat. Entire neighborhoods remain underwater. A museum opened doors to evacuees with nowhere else to go. More than 15,000 people have been displaced, at least 14 people killed. The damage from the floods is already estimated to cost more than $1 billion. Closer to home, officials in Alberta are urging residents to stay vigilant this long weekend. There are 92 fires burning, nearly 1/3 out of control. As Julia Wong shows us, a dozen provincial parks are now closed to try to keep more fires from sparking.
The wildfire risk remains high in the province. Temperatures are expected to be hot this long weekend. Couple that with dry conditions and people wanting to be out and about for the May long weekend, and officials are urging Albertans to be mindful. Now, this campground is about 40 kilometers southwest of Edmonton, and it's pretty much full for the May long weekend. But there's a different feel right now because of the threat of wildfires. There's a fire ban in the province, so people are only allowed to use propane fire pits, and campers have been telling us that they've been changing their plans because of the smoke, because of the issues with visibility. Campers here seem to be more on guard because of the massive number of wildfires we're seeing in Alberta right now.
These fires this year are a lot closer to home. People are being, here we're finding, very respectful and concerned, which is why we're fielding that many more calls.
We have to follow the fire ban, but we've got all propane fire pits, so we do what we call a fake fire.
The province is restricting activities like mountain biking or hiking because they've been devastated by wildfires or because they're at risk of wildfires. Several provincial parks are also closed because of the high fire risk. Julia Wong, CBC News, Devon, Alberta.
Nick is here with us again. You know, some folks might not know this, but you're also a commercial pilot. You were actually flying over the fires out west just a couple days ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible to see, and not obviously in a good way. It's just a massive wall of cloud made by the smoke from the forest fires themselves. I mean, you can't even see a lot of the fires just because it's covered by the smoke. And it's very dependent on the way that the winds sort of shift. The day that I was out there, Calgary started out with sunshine and then quickly shifted over to visibilities less than a kilometer in thick, heavy smoke. And a lot of people out there wearing masks, but not for the reasons we were used to over the last couple of years. They're wearing masks because you can taste the smoke in the air, it's in your eyes. Really, really poor conditions in some areas, and it's all dependent on the weather patterns. Now, we've had this blocking high that's been in place. It's slowly starting to weaken, but we're seeing still some of this cloud cover driven by the smoke moving across the prairie provinces. And in fact, we've still got air quality advisories right across the region. There are some places worse than others. And again, with visibilities in smoke, less than about kilometers. So very, very poor conditions, in addition to, of course, the fires as well. Now, coming back to home, it's really the rain that we're looking at as this line moves across. I mentioned that earlier on. Showers for tonight across the region, mostly after about sort of 9-10 p.m. for the GTA. Heavier amounts to the north, though. Showers taper by tomorrow morning. A few isolated showers into the afternoon tomorrow, and then by Sunday morning and into the afternoon as well, we've got sunshine, and that lasts right through until Monday. We've got seasonal temperatures in the forecast too. Here's a look at some of the accumulations. Around 20 millimeters of rain, although some places around Cottage Country could see more than that. Tonight's temperatures down to 14 degrees for the city of Toronto, and similar temperatures right across southern Ontario. A little cooler tomorrow at 18 degrees. Seasonal for this time of year is 20, to put that in perspective. 22 on Sunday, and then Monday back to 18 degrees, but lots of sunshine. That carries us right through until Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. Shannon.
Hey, not too bad at all. Thanks so much for being with us on this long weekend, Nick.
Oh, you bet. My pleasure.
Have a good one.
You too.
Junior, the International Children's Festival, is taking over Harbourfront Centre this weekend. We got a preview from one of the groups taking part.
My name is Eureka Hinkle. I am the founder of the Sakura Mai Toronto. I started this style of dance in 2008. The reason why I started it is because I knew the Yosakoi from my experience in Japan, and I belonged to a Yosakoi dance group in Tokyo, and I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people through that. And that team was in 1998. They still are, performing throughout the Japan. And when I started, the girls were 3 years old. They are now grown up and they're in 20s, 30s, and they're actually, leading the group. So it has this, sense of belonging in that group, and also trying to accomplish something, together to create something, that is entertaining for other people to watch. So it has that sense as well. And for me, the reason why I started this is because I wanted to bring people together, as well as I wanted to introduce that Japanese style of, sense of community, sense of belonging. We have a lot of, great dancers, great members in the group, and they all love what they do, and it shows in their performance, and that's what I really, really like about. And it doesn't matter if you have a dance experience or not, anyone can do it, and that's the key point with the Yosakoi as well. Toronto is a great city. It's a multicultural city that, any nationality can, be together, and it becomes a tool myself. Like, I feel like it becomes a tool to bring people together, whether what culture or what background you have. And, dance is something that you express yourself, and, it kind of brings people's energy together, and it's a perfect place to do that.
It's going to be a fun weekend, lots of free programming for the whole family. That's our show for you tonight. Thanks for joining us. We hope you have a great long weekend. I'm back with you tomorrow at 6.